All right, Shalom. Before we go any further within this lesson, I want to open up by giving our praises, honor, and glory with infinite blessings unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. All right. And I also want to give double honors to our beloved other bishops and to the other apostles of Great Millstone that teach well and rule well, with much blessings and salutations going out to the Lord's hopeful elect. All right, always, which consists of the Akim, you feel Akwaf that are tuning in, and then to the men laboring within this truth, scattered across the four corners of the earth, wherever you may be. Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Barakatham unto you and to your households. All right, as we're living in those days where all these visions, all right, are going to be fulfilled. All right, all the sayings within, these holy scriptures, man, this book, all right, will come to pass. All right, has already came to pass or is currently happening. All right, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai. I also want to give double honors to our beloved bishops and to the other apostles. I don't know if I did it already, but just to make sure. But just going straight into it. It says a shocking 105 million Americans are not working. Damn. It says more than the C or the Great Recession. It says according to a report from the New York Post, the number of Americans aged 16 and older classified as not in the labor force reached a new all-time high of 105.8 million in June. It says this surge makes a significant increase with 832,000 additional adults dropping out of labor force in June alone. All right. And that's really due to the amount of hours and work, really labor that has to be put in, just to ultimately not see any significance within your payout. All right. We can see the increase of livelihood, from rent, okay, from the food, okay, due to inflation, all right, which it's really turning over to a hyperinflation. Also, to add on to it, the resources that you need to even, go to work, all right, like gas, all right, which that's going to, continue to go up. That's just going to shoot out the roof, due to this these economic tensions. All right, well, this conflict over there in the so-called Middle East between Iran, the U.S., and, these little small hats, all right, which, these are just going to formulate, if I'm using that word, right, a, miniature crisis to where the people of the world are going to be in difficult situations in which right now you already have, 105 million people over here in America, Babylon the Great, that's not working. All right. You got the rest that is working. All right. And, but, they don't want to work because, they're not making nothing. Okay. You're busting your ass for a company. All right. Which don't care about you, which is, already has your replacement. All right. And your replacement is a fucking AI robot. Okay. And, they know this, people know this. This is where the direction is going to, man. All right. Ultimately, this is what your overseers, these elites, top banking families, all right, these, the wicked, as the Bible tells you, that's in control of the world. This is what they this is what they want. This is what they're pushing for. So yeah, it says the total now exceeds levels seen during the depths of the Great Recession in the height of the C-19 epidemic. Demic. All right. It says raising fresh concerns about workforce participation in the world's largest economy. All right, which was supposed to be America. All right, America, Babylon the Great was supposed to be this big and strong, which it really was. All right, it's known as the land of the free, etc. To where people would come over here for a better chance at life. All right, these heathens, will come from their nation, their countries, to come over here to, seek a chance to work, get some education. All right, start a business here, or make some money, and ultimately to provide for their families, their nations back at where they come from. But now, scriptures tell you, it says this, window dark. All right, it tells you how those that look out the window, all right, it's it's not looking too good for the future of America. Have you ever heard a saying, someone say, oh, this person has a bright future, or there's a bright future for, somebody or something. Well, that's not the case for Babylon the Great, anymore, bro. So the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12 and verse 3, it says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble. All right, which the keepers of the house going into these elites, all right, which ultimately rule over, everything and everyone, currently, having the dominion of this world. All right, they own the world, and all right, they upkeep, Babylon the Great, and the rest of these other countries. All right, but point being is that we, the keepers of the house are these elites, man, and they're scared, they're trembling. All right, because they understand that hey, man, they're gonna have to see Yahushua very soon. All right, this is why prophecy is happening the way it's happening so much and so quick. And this is why, the economy is going to shit. All right, because this is a form of a tactic of, these elites, Esau, Edom, basically, picking up the pace, as Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12 says. All right, the devil has come down to the people. All right, you Americans, all right, really everybody around the whole world, but mainly Babylonians, because well, I wouldn't say we, because we not a part of this shit, but y'all gonna feel it the worst. All right, you're gonna feel the worst part of this economic collapse, because those that have lived over here and that dwelt here, grow up in America, so-called American citizens, to plainly put it, man, you had it easy, bro. All right, you had pleasures that you're easily accessible to you. All right, multiple things, man, which America, Babylon the Great, promotes. And this is why it was known to be in this article we just read, that strong economy, okay, or the world's largest economy, but it ain't looking too good for this place, bro. But the point is, Ecclesiastes 12 and 3, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, all right, because they're scared, all right, and they're seeing everything that they're doing, all right, it's ultimately lining up with the will of Yahweh Shimon Shai, even though they're adverse to the ways of the Lord, they're still going in that direction. So they're trying to do everything they can, all right, to ultimately, establish this new world order, man. All right, this fifth or sixth industrial revolution, all right, through AI and its technology, all right, via that the RFID microchip, which is known as the mark of the beast. All right, and it says, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease. All right, call all y'all Bashim Mashai. All right, because the grinders ceasing is going into the workforce, the work area, man. All right, those who operate the grinders, all right, are not there. Thus, it's ceasing, meaning they stop. And why is that? Because the economy is fucked. All right, and this is what it's going into. People not being able to find jobs, or even though they're looking for jobs. Indeed, there's a pandemic on jobs, bro. It's like, a pandemic of not having jobs, bro. Like, it's bad. Even brothers themselves know. What I'm saying? If they felt it, but it's all due. It's all prophecy, bro. Regardless, we're gonna be okay. We gonna fuck okay, bro. We're gonna be, if we be the Lord's will. I mean, if we be the Lord's elect, Yahweh Tazah, bro, we're gonna be, highly favored within these times, man. Because even though bros, losing jobs, finding jobs, losing to find them, or trying, it's hard trying to find them. Having a hard time trying to find these things. The Lord's ultimately gonna provide in these times. But for a lot of these people, the 1.105 million people, all right, they're ultimately going to be left to, their devices, man. And they're going to have to figure it out. All right. But it says, and the grinders cease because they are few. Yeah. So the jobs. And now you have an article in which one of the bros put into the chat, Publix. It's gonna start making and their employees, I think it says unload trucks or something like that. It's in the chat. I don't want to go into that and expose the chat like that. It says it's like expose it, like there's nothing that really expose anything, but it says public, where is it at? Please. Hold on. Bear with me for a second. Let me see if we can go into this real quick. Here it is. It says public vendors lays off 168 people in Lakeland, Sarasota after losing contract. All right, which I should have read into it a little bit more, but it says the company that unloaded merchandise at 5 public supermarket distribution centers. It says 4 in Lakeland and 1 in Sarasota is laying off 168 employees after the grocer cut its contract with the company. The company freight handlers notified state and local officials of the cuts in pair of letters sent to meet Federal Worker Adjustments and Training Notification Act requirements. According to the letters, freight handlers will no longer perform third-party unloading services at the center starting September 19. All affected employees have been notified on their separation date and that their separation from employment will be permanent, the letter says. All right, and what does that go into, man? All right. All right, the grind is ceasing. All right, now people being out of jobs. You got a job, man. That's how you make your bread. That's how you provide for your family. And now, certain of these people won't be able to do that. All right, and it's already hard enough trying to find a job in this, society, this dying society, this economy, if you do not have a high, even if you have a high paying, career, it's you're also liable to lose, that job as well. But unless you have like a blue collar, I think it's called blue collar, or you're in some type of trade. Right now, it's not really even within that, you know what I'm saying? It's not looking good, bro. The point is, niggas is fucked, bro. All right, Babylonians is done. You fucked. All right. This is the time we in. Okay. So we ain't gotta read too much more in that article, but it says back in this Ecclesiastes, it says from the top, Ecclesiastes 12:3 says, "In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few." All right, which we just read over, Lakeland, Sarasota, in which, these are places over here in Florida, so my area, just to let you guys know that this is it's real, and which we understand. You already know places around, wherever y'all stay at, y'all see it. All right, the employment rate is it's terrible. It's disgusting. It's so low. All right, but it's all prophecy, bro. All right, and it says, "And those that look out the windows be darkened." Yeah. All right, looking out the window, you look out the window. All right, meaning, looking for some type of hope or light, all right, or a future within this place, which there is no, it's dark, meaning the end of this place is really, it's gonna be destruction, bro. All right, it's utter darkness. The Lord's gonna destroy this place, and that's what's currently going on. What's taking place, man. All right, destruction to Babylon the Great on a whole wide scale, on an economic point of view, on a financial point of view, okay, on a spiritual point of view, all right, on entertainment point of view. Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai is not fucking off with the whore, bro. All right, Babylon the Great. All right, and it says, going back to this article, it says the category encompasses a broad group, including retirees, students, and others who are neither employed nor actively seeking work. All right, in which you have people not actively seeking work due to them. Hey, Kalaya Bashimashai, it's a beautiful bird. But like I was gonna say, due to them not being able to get the opportunity to, man. All right, they'd be lucky if you get an interview or even a call back from these businesses or these jobs, bro. All right, in which you might get a call back or interview, but high chances you're not gonna get the job. All right, and it's bad even going to these food restaurants, man. These McDonald's, Burger Kings, gas station jobs, these, measly jobs. All right. Even those within themselves, man, it's like, it's trying to find a fucking lottery ticket, man. Or you're trying to hit the, the jackpot. So, people have just given up. All right. They've just given up hope, or, really giving up on America, man. All right. Giving up on this place. And which, if you did, it's a good thing. All right. Because guess what? The Lord Yahweh Shema Shai has been forsaking this place. All right. So for you Jews, you Israelites, all right, as the scripture says, to arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. The next thing you want to do is to seek the Lord. Seek Yahweh Shema Shai while he may be found, in which, all right, ultimately, man, the Lord is he's here, what I'm saying? He's doing his thing. But the point is to seek him and to establish a relationship with him and the only begotten son, Yahweh Shai. That's the one you people ignorantly call Jesus Christ, all right, which he's the only one that can save and deliver you from these hard, trying times, man, because these job layoffs, okay, the crashing out of the people, the economy collapsing, all right, from Esau, Edom, destroying the earth, data centers, draining the waters to the point where water is now coming what is it? I think it's like commodity, asset. You know, natural waters. Bro, it's bad. All right, it just reads evil all on it. All right, as the scripture says. All right, let me get that real quick. All right. Bear me for a second. Take no thought. GNT, I didn't really have it in GNT. Matthew chapter 6 and verse 34 in the AMP, it says, so do not worry about tomorrow. Okay? Because, bro, motherfuckers alone can't even go through the day that they're in right now. People are suffering mentally, spiritually, and even on physically, ailments, being poisoned. Esau Edom poison in the air more and more. He gonna do that. Poisoning the fruits, the cabbage, to where, the lettuce, to the point where, people got, like Elder Yashwama said, dookie demons on them, man. Explosive diarrhea, all right. More, heavier forms of enchantments are going up, because this is what Esau Edom does. He's an enchanter. He's a sorcerer, man. All right, he's that same serpent from the garden, okay? And he's here to do exactly, that, man, to take peace from the earth, and to have everybody in this motherfucker discombobulated, just fucked up in the head. But we understand that this is not going to work on the Lord's elect. As it says, he would not be able, if it was possible, he would, deceive the Lord's elect, but he's not going to, all right, because the Lord's elect, all right, belong unto Yahweh Shem Shai. All right, so Matthew 6 and 34, so do not worry. In the AMP, it says, so do not worry about tomorrow. All right, because motherfuckers, once again, can't even get through the day that we have already. People are being judged going back to the spiritual world as we speak, man. All right, and even tomorrow we'll be going back to the spirit world, man. So it's bad, bro. It's evil. All right, more crash out moments, all right, because people are feeling the heat. People are ready to get, start crashing out, leave their families behind. It's bad, bro. It's in which, in this case, it's beautiful to us because we get to see the Lord work. All right. It says, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. All right. And which in the KJV, it says, take no thought for tomorrow will take thought for itself. It says, for sufficient is the evil of it thereof. All right. Going into the bad times in which we see them, bro. We see them. It's happening. These people definitely feel them. All right. Everybody's really feeling, some type of trouble. But really depends on how you take it. The adversity, because the elect is going to go through these things and through this adversity. All right, and take it with cheer, knowing that this is going to, be the build up. All right, to their glory. But the rest of these people, man, they're suffering because they belong to this world, and nothing is going right for them. All right. It's a difference between us, man. All right. Between those who serve the Lord, and those who don't serve, Yahweh Shem Shai. All right. Finish this off a little bit. It says the category encompasses a broad group, including retirees, students, and others who are neither employed nor actively seeking work. Leading labor economist Nicholas Eberstadt highlighted troubling trends within the data, particularly among prime age men. We've got a big problem with the flight from work of prime age men and what's been carrying the overall prime age labor. forced participation has been the strong involvement of women, not men. All right, in which society so adds backwards to where they tear down the man. All right, this firstly starting with the so-called black African American Negro, which is the Israelite man, and then following the rest of these men. All right, but because this world is created catered to women, but this world tears down the men, okay, and then tell a man what he's supposed to be, and but men today, young men and older men are saying, man, fuck that. Why work for something not in which we not appreciated, and so now it's to the point you got men not wanting to be men, all right, women not wanting to be women. So it's just a whole bunch of confusion going on, bro. All right, and that's how the Lord wants it. All right, confusion. All right, in this place, because that's what it's Babylon the Great. All right, the land of confusion, the city of confusion. All right, as it says. I believe that's Jeremiah. All right, but it says, Eberstol, who told the Henry Wilt Chair in Political Economy, the American Enterprise Institute, told the Post, approximately 5.3 million individuals, or about 5%, and those not in the labor force, are classified as discouraged workers who have stopped looking for employment. An even large share, up to 22%, or more than 23.3 million Americans, are on long-term illness, disability, or related benefits. So their crunch is the system, the government. All right, in which, man, you see how the government going, man. This shit, can't even sustain itself. All right, it's using the money from the people. So people leading on to this place, but this place is done, bro. This whore's on her bad leg. All right, and circling the drain. So it's just a whole bunch of throughness, as we see. And it says, this figure surpasses the portion of Americans over 16 enrolled in full-time education, estimated at 16 to 18%, or roughly 19 million people. That's why you got people, wanting to go to the military, all right, and fighting this third world war. This third world, but your ass gonna be blown to fucking smithereens, man. Just had young Jake, 19, tell me, yesterday, he said he want to go to the military. I said, bro, you crazy as hell. I was like, nah, man, you tripping. Military good. We hear it all this time. I got so-called friends or peers, or whatever, people of the world, or people I knew, that went to the military. They're in the military currently. And before even going, I told them, a handful of them, what was going to go down, what was going to happen. You're going to meet the Lord, etc. World War III is biblical prophecy. They didn't leave me. They went, and no, all right, they're going to see Yahushua upon his return, because your ass will be fighting in this third world war, all right? And it says retirees represent the largest segment, accounting for up to 50% of the total. This reflects the aging baby boomer generations, with about 45% retiring at or age 65 and 30. In which, bro, that's just through. Ain't nobody retiring no more. You retiring at fucking 80 damn years old. They're gonna continue to move that fine line of retirement, because ultimately they're gonna milk you till you drop dead. That's what he wants. All right. In which, this article is pretty lengthy. It's a good article. Let's see if we almost done. We could probably finish it. All right. It says, despite the record absolute number, the labor force participation rate stood at 59% in June, the lowest in September 2021. Such low participation rates were previously seen over the aftermath of the Great Recession, in which we're going through another Great Recession or Great Depression. All right. This is the so-called restoration, all right, of Esau, Edom. All right. All right. So the build-up, the New World Order. So these things are going to happen, man. Take place to where people are losing, going without. All right, it's a hard reset. All right, this nigga's trying to wipe everything clean in order to be able to bring in this Satanic NWO. All right? Because he's the fucking devil the Bible speaks of, man. All right? He's demonic. He's Edomites, man. Top of big and elite families. So let's get this. Isaiah 19 and verse 16. Go straight to the point. It says, in verse 14, it says, the Lord Yahweh have mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof. Let's get this word perverse. All right. So the word perverse, it says wicked. Okay, unnatural, turned away. All right, and that's what really the mindset of these people. They're wicked, they're unnatural, they're turned away. All right, they turned away from the Lord. All right, they don't reverence the Lord, they don't respect, they don't pray, they don't call, they don't look to the Yahweh Shema Shai, or so-called really God as they know it. All right, because this is a wicked and adulterous generation, as the scripture says. Not only that, but you have the wicked one in the seat of power. So if the wicked one is in the seat of power and he's ruling, how much more, all right, those under him are going to be accustomed to his ways, man. All right, unnatural, perverse. So that's this type of spirit that's in America, in Babylon the Great, and that's heavily upon the people here in America. All right, especially 2/3 of our people. But the rest of these people, it's a perverse, nasty, wicked spirit, man, which is ready to reveal itself among these people, all right, in the time of these evils as they increase. You're going to see the love they have for one another, man. As Matthew says, it's waxing and it's going cold, meaning they ain't got no love for each other, man. All right. The simplest things, all right, that you wouldn't do, it's as simple as, I don't know, man. Fuck, all right. Just know these people going to be at each other's necks, man. All right. It says, in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work, meaning to go off, to fuck up. And Egypt, spiritually being America, Babylon the Great. All right. In every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit, because now this place is through. The people of this place are drunk. They don't know what to believe. They don't know what to go, where to turn to. All right, but we telling you, Jakes, man, you Israelites, to return to Yahweh Shema Shai, because the Lord is about to plague this place, and thus why everybody and everyone is drunk and confused in the state that they're in. All right, not knowing the times or what's about to take place, really ultimately upon them and their households. This is why you want the covering of the Lord to be upon you in your households within these evil days, because Yahweh Shema Shai, all right, is the one that's about to turn this bitch completely inside out, upside down, all right, via these plagues, okay, and these scourges, all right, famine, tribulation, anguish, okay, these are the punishments to which the Lord is sending to the whole world, but mainly America, man. Verse 15 says, neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or tail branch or rush may do. Yeah, so ain't gonna be no fucking work, bro. And we're already seeing it right now. All right, the America want to go to war with Iran. Got these motherfuckers over there tweaking. All right, and these Iranians ready to do it. They've been ready to do it. All right, they ready to bang it out, man. The Lord has trapped Babylon the Great, using definitely Donald J. Trump, to where the point now, everything you buy, from the gas prices, from the food, the clothes, resources, all that shit is going to be unaccessible to you people, man, unavailable. All right, especially how you're going to obtain it when you ain't got no job. You're going to get that shit by doing wickedness, all right? And so we see where this is going, man. It's going to a chaotic anarchy, okay, destructive vibe, man, state, Verse 16 says, and in that day shall Egypt be like unto women, and shall be afraid and fear because of the shaking of the hand of the Lord Yahweh of hosts, of armies, which he shaketh over it. Yep, the Lord shaking this bitch up. All right, you get shaken up, you trembling. That's why the keepers of the house are trembling. They're scared. All right, because the Lord he's put his hand on this place, and he's making this bitch move, like, what I'm saying, like strangling this motherfucker, bro. 2 hands, all right? Not even 2 hands, 1 hand, all right? All right, your right hand. How shy? He's shaking up his place, bro. So, hey, man, this ain't looking too good. All right, for anybody and all those who go against, Yahweh Shema Shai. All right, but for the men, the believers, the women, the children, okay, the Akim, Bafi, Akwaf, the believers, the hopeful elect. All right, man, this is perfect. This is beautiful, man. So all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying, man. It's just, hey, let's, continue to participate and to watch, all right, the works of, our power, all right, do his thing. So next time I say, Shalom.